imagine realizing that every single self-improvement book you've ever read, or like every meditation habit you've meticulously built,
Oh, yeah.
and every attempt you've ever made to just be a quote-unquote good person is actually just building a stronger, more inescapable prison for your mind.
It's a heavy thought.
Right. But that is the radical and honestly deeply uncomfortable premise we are looking at today. We are unpacking a transcript from a very small, intensely focused group discussion.
Held in London, right?
Yeah, in London, back in 1962, led by the philosopher J. Krishnamurti. And I gotta say, if you're listening to this deep dive right now to learn something new to apply to your own personal growth, this might just completely flip your worldview upside down.
It completely dismantles the foundation of how society tells us to operate. I mean, the transcript from this discussion doesn't just critique our bad habits, you know? It goes after our virtues.
Right, which is wild.
Yeah, it targets the very machinery of how we try to fix ourselves. It really forces anyone engaging with it to completely rethink what true freedom actually is.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Krishnamurti starts by looking at the absolute root of human behavior, what he calls our deep conditioning.
Right, and he draws a really clear line immediately between superficial conditioning and deep conditioning.
Which is an important distinction to make.
Exactly. So superficial conditioning is just the label you happen to wear. It's the passport you hold.
Like where you were born.
Right. You might be born in America or Russia, India, Australia. You might have been raised to wear a certain style of clothing or eat specific regional foods.
Sure.
And those layers are relatively easy to peel off. You know, you can move to a new continent, learn a new language, completely change your wardrobe.
But the deep conditioning is, it's like the invisible operating system running beneath all of those surface-level choices.
Yes, exactly.
It's the centuries of human thought, the ingrained cultural values, the unconscious emotional reactions. It's that tremendous weight of the past that dictates every thought we have before we even realize we are having it.
And the instinctive human response, right, when we recognize that deep, messy conditioning, is to try to clean it up.
Right, to fix it.
Yeah, we engage in what Krishnamurti calls refinement. We look at our flaws, say, like a tendency to be selfish or arrogant, and we discipline ourselves to become unselfish, virtuous, refined.
Which society completely applauds, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. We are told from birth that this process of polishing ourselves is the path to liberation. I mean,
Right.
the transcript even mentions how in the 1960s, people were increasingly turning to psychedelic drugs.
Oh yeah, the mescaline and LSD-25 mentioned.
Right. They were taking these things to try and force a heightened, more sensitive state of mind.
Which, according to this discussion, completely misses the point.
Totally misses it.
Because whether you are dedicating yourself to an organized religion, or agonizing over being the perfect charitable neighbor, or even taking psychedelics to artificially expand your consciousness, you are still running the exact same software program. You're just doing refinement. And this is the part that feels so entirely counterintuitive to me. If I am stuck in a dark, miserable cell of my own conditioning, making that cell more comfortable, painting the walls a brighter color, bringing in a nice armchair, I mean, that seems like a logical, necessary improvement.
It seems like it, sure.
So wait, trying to be a good or cultured neighbor is actually moving us in the wrong direction. Why is a nicer cell a bad thing?
Well, by making the cell more comfortable, you deceive yourself into believing you are no longer in a prison.
Oh, wow.
Right. Refinement requires conformity. To be a quote-unquote better person, you have to conform to a predetermined pattern of what better means.
Like society's rules.
Exactly. Whether that pattern is handed down by a church, a social circle, or just your own internal idealized self-image, achieving that pattern demands immense discipline and control.
So you're not actually free.
Not at all. You are still operating within the exact same structural machinery of your conditioning. You are just ensuring the gears run smoothly and quietly so you don't notice the noise.
I see. You're giving the past a polished new look and calling it the future.
Beautifully put.
You are still trapped in the old paradigm, just decorating the bars of the cage.
Which is why Krishnamurti argues that true freedom requires the total psychological destruction of that structure, not its renovation.
Total destruction.
Yeah. You cannot gradually polish your way into liberation.
But wait, if we can't refine our way out of our conditioning, we are left totally defenseless against our absolute worst traits.
Oh, that's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, take anger, for example. We've all experienced it. It destroys relationships, and we are taught that a mature adult learns to conquer it. We strive for freedom from anger.
Right, and what's fascinating here is that the language of freedom from is exactly where the trap lies. Krishnamurti deconstructs this brilliantly.
How so?
When someone claims they want to be free from anger, what they're usually doing is just building a wall of resistance.
The wall.
Yeah, they decide, I will never be angry, because acting out in anger doesn't pay. It might cost them their job.
Or their marriage.
Exactly, or their social standing in the community.
So if I suppress my anger, because I know it'll get me in trouble, why isn't that freedom? It's like holding a giant inflated beach ball underwater. You push the anger down because you know it's socially unacceptable to let it splash everywhere.
That's a perfect analogy.
But holding that ball down requires constant, agonizing tension. You are never actually free from the beach ball. Your entire existence becomes defined by the exhausting effort of suppressing it.
And that physical tension you just described is the exact psychological emptiness and conflict Krishnamurti points to. By suppressing the anger, you've divided yourself into two opposing forces.
The anger and the me trying to stop the anger.
Yes, the anger itself and the you that is desperately trying to control it. You haven't resolved the root of the anger at all. You are just managing an endless internal war zone.
Wow.
Furthermore, the very concept of saying, I will never be angry, projects a rigid ideal into the future. It relies on the continuity of time, enforcing a past decision onto every future moment.
So a calculated wall against a negative emotion is the complete opposite of liberation.
It really is.
It's just more discipline, more control, more refinement of that prison cell we talked about. True freedom, then, wouldn't be this tense, exhausting suppression.
No, at all.
It would have to be a state of profound stability that isn't dependent on building a wall in the first place, like a state entirely untouched by the trigger.
And achieving that untouched state is where we crash violently into the limitations of our own biology.
Because our brains don't work like that naturally.
Exactly. We instinctively try to use logic and reasoning to escape the trap, but the intellect is fundamentally the wrong tool for the job.
Why is it the wrong tool?
Because the intellect functions through fragmentation. It takes a massive, complex reality and chops it up into tiny, digestible pieces so it can analyze them sequentially.
It's the ultimate bottleneck for the brain. It can only process one file at a time.
Perfectly said.
Actually, the transcript shares a fascinating anecdote about this from one of the participants. This person spent time trying to explain to a group that the real issue in a specific political context wasn't imperialism, but tribalism.
Right, I remember this part.
And the cognitive leap required was to recognize that tribalism operates on the exact same psychological mechanism as nationalism.
And the participant confessed that it took them 10 years of intellectual wrestling to finally grasp that tribalism and nationalism were fundamentally the same thing.
10 years?
10 full years just to connect two concepts. The brain struggles to connect these dots because the intellect inherently defends its own identity.
So it's protecting itself.
Exactly. A person deeply attached to their nation's identity will resist seeing it as mere tribalism because the intellect protects the ego. Because it deals in fragments and defenses, the intellect is agonizingly slow when trying to dismantle deep, interconnected psychological structures.
Which is a huge problem because we simply do not have decades to slowly unspool every single thread of our human conditioning.
We really don't.
You can't just schedule your personal liberation, saying, oh, I'll work on my ingrained societal snobism this year, and I'll tackle my unconscious racial prejudices in 2030. Life is happening right now, continuously.
And that gradualism just traps you in that endless cycle of time and refinement we established earlier.
So what's the alternative?
Krishnamurti's radical alternative is instantaneous action. He argues that true perception cannot be a slow, step-by-step process of intellectual digestion.
It has to happen all at once.
Yes, you have to see the total implications of society's psychological structure all at once and drop it instantly. He refers to this as seeing in a flash.
The source gives the example of smoking, which I think brings this incredibly high-level philosophy right down to earth.
It's a very grounded example.
Because the intellectual gradual approach to quitting smoking is basically a negotiation. You tell yourself it's bad for your health, you plan to cut down to 5 cigarettes a day, and maybe you'll quit entirely by next month.
You're stretching the problem across time.
Right. But Krishnamurti argues that if you truly perceive the complete reality of smoking, if you see its destructive nature entirely, in a flash, you drop it immediately. No motives, no future plans, no tapering off. You just drop it.
The seeing is the action. There is no gap between perceiving the danger and dropping the habit.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is the part of the transcript that completely broke my brain, the analogy of the hot coal.
Ooh, that's a powerful one.
If you accidentally pick up a burning hot piece of coal, you don't sit there intellectually analyzing the physics of thermodynamics.
Right, you don't form a committee in your head.
Exactly. You don't create a 5-step program for releasing your fingers over the next 10 minutes. And you certainly don't build a psychological wall against the pain. You feel the immense heat, your biology perceives the total danger instantly, and you drop the coal.
You don't need a motive to drop the coal. The intense perception of the danger does the work for you.
It's automatic.
Yes. And Krishnamurti is asking us to look at the entirety of our psychological baggage. The greed, the ambition, the desperate need for security, the virtues society imposes on us, and see it as that burning coal.
So if you genuinely see the danger of it, you drop it effortlessly.
Yeah.
Like a dead leaf falling from a branch.
Exactly like that.
But human brains are literally hardwired for motives. We do things because we want results. We act to survive, to gain an advantage, to secure our future. How does someone just drop centuries of evolutionary survival instincts in a flash?
It's not easy.
Especially when dropping, it means letting go of everything that makes up our identity. He lists out kings, queens, priests, snobism, virtues, racial differences. If we drop all of that instantly, we are totally naked.
Psychologically speaking, yes.
I'd just be standing in the middle of a chaotic society without any of my mental armor. That doesn't sound like freedom. It sounds like terrifying vulnerability.
And that sense of terror is completely natural. It was deeply felt and voiced by the participants in that 1962 room.
They felt it too.
Absolutely. But Krishnamurti clarifies that dropping the psychological structure doesn't mean retreating from the physical world. He explicitly says, not the cloth, I don't mean that. The job, I don't mean that.
So he's not saying run away.
No, he's not advocating that you quit your job, abandon your family, and go live as a hermit in a cave somewhere. He is talking about stepping out of the psychological stream of society, the constant, rushing current of ambition, comparison, and fear.
So I am still participating in the world. I'm still going to the grocery store, still doing my job, but I'm stripped of the psychological baggage attached to those actions.
Exactly. You enter a state of immense watchfulness.
Watchfulness.
Yeah. The text uses a very grounding analogy here to explain how this works without the intellect interfering, and it's crossing a busy street.
Okay.
When you step off the curb into heavy traffic, you are completely awake. You are hyper-attentive to the cars, the speed, the danger, but your watchfulness is purely sensory and present.
You aren't watching from a center of neurotic fear or psychological baggage.
Right. You don't hate the cars. You aren't comparing the cars to each other in a jealous rage. You simply observe the danger and flow out of its way effortlessly.
You're navigating the chaos without absorbing it. You are intensely present, but not emotionally entangled in the machinery of the street.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, look at the direction the modern world pushes us.
Towards more stuff.
Society demands that we constantly seek more security, more prosperity, more authority. We spend our entire lives building fortresses of security, financial portfolios, emotional walls, social status.
We want to be safe.
But Krishnamurti warns that the more you chase psychological security, the more you wrap yourself in the rigid structure of society, and the less watchful you become.
Because you're hiding behind your walls.
Exactly. The obsession with being secure actually puts you to sleep. You lose the ability to see the cars coming because you're too busy reinforcing the walls of your personal fortress.
You're so focused on defending your little patch of the sidewalk that you lose all awareness of the street itself.
That's exactly it.
Okay, so the goal, if we can even call it a goal without falling back into the trap of motives, is to see the hot coal in a flash, drop it, and live in this state of awake watchfulness.
Right.
Logically, I can follow the thread, but practically, it feels impossible. Why do we struggle so violently to actually achieve this instantaneous perception?
Because the transcript points to our acquisitive mind as the fundamental barrier.
Acquisitive meaning we want to acquire things.
Yes, we are deeply conditioned to acquire. And we don't just want to acquire money or property. We want to acquire states of mind, enlightenment, and spiritual superiority.
There's a stunning metaphor in the source material about the fury of a cloud that illustrates this perfectly.
I love this metaphor.
Krishnamurti asks us to imagine two people standing together looking at the sky. One person looks up and is totally captivated by the immense, furious beauty of a cloud. They are entirely present with it, experiencing it without any filter or intellectual fragmentation.
They're just seeing it.
Right. But the other person looks up and feels absolutely nothing. They are blind to the beauty.
And the tragedy of human interaction happens in the very next moment. The person who feels nothing realizes that the first person has an experience they lack. Instantly, the acquisitive mind takes over.
They want it.
They want to get that vision. They turn to the first person and demand, I want to see what you see. Tell me the method. Give me the system to acquire that state.
So the brain's desperate desire for security instantly turns a beautiful present moment experience into a transactional, future-oriented goal. The blind person thinks enlightenment is a commodity they can trade for.
Exactly. And in doing so, they immediately create an authority dynamic. They turn the other person into a guru and themselves into a follower.
And this acquisitive drive completely ruins the whole thing.
It utterly destroys any possibility of true listening or true relationship. When you listen to someone purely to extract a method, a piece of knowledge, or a conceptual breakthrough to use for your own improvement, you are not actually listening to them.
You're just taking from them.
You are only listening to the projection of your own desire. You are treating the interaction as a transaction to enrich your own psychological bank account.
Like, I am listening to you so I can mine your words for a golden nugget that will fix my life.
Yes.
That transactional mindset is the very essence of the ambition and comparison we are supposedly trying to escape.
Which is why Krishnamurti elevates the concept of true listening to an incredibly profound level to combat this. He actually equates true listening with love.
With love, that's quite elite.
It sounds like it, but he suggests that to truly listen means meeting the other person intellectually, physically, and emotionally at the exact same level, at the exact same time.
So no hierarchy.
Right. There is no authority, no follower, no one ahead, and no one behind. Just two human beings looking at a problem together in the present moment, completely stripped of the agenda to acquire or improve.
So what does this all mean for us right now? Because if you approach this very concept of conditioning with the agenda of, okay, I need to listen to this philosophy so I can learn how to fix myself and become watchful, you have failed before you've even started.
It's the ultimate paradox.
You are treating the concept as a future ideal to be achieved, rather than an actuality to be observed right now.
Exactly. It is the ultimate paradox for anyone trying to learn from this 1962 discussion. You cannot acquire freedom by trying to grab it. The act of listening itself, completely free from the motive to gain an advantage, is the catalyst. As the transcript suggests toward the end, true listening is a miracle that completely settles everything.
It is a total inversion of how we normally live our lives.
Completely.
I mean, we open this deep dive by examining how we try to refine our conditioning. You know, putting a fresh coat of paint on the prison walls and calling it self-improvement.
Decorating the cake.
Right. We explored how relying on the intellect traps us in a gradual, piecemeal process, and how suppressing things like anger is really just holding a beach ball underwater, creating an exhausting internal war.
And the radical alternative is that instantaneous flash of perception. Recognizing the burning coal of society's psychological structure, the ambition, the comparisons, the desperate clinging to security, and dropping it instantly without a calculated motive.
Just dropping it.
Stepping into the busy street of life with total watchfulness, entirely awake but free from the fear that drives the traffic.
And all of that requires abandoning our deeply ingrained compulsion to acquire. It demands that we just truly, deeply listen.
Which is incredibly hard.
It is incredibly heavy, radically counterintuitive, and honestly, absolutely fascinating to grapple with.
It forces a massive reevaluation of how we move through the world. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder long after this audio ends. Think about the very next conversation you have today, whether it's with a colleague, a partner, or just a stranger. Are you truly listening to them in that exact moment, meeting them completely without an agenda? Or are you just listening to acquire something, a piece of information, a social advantage, or even just the perfect, witty reply to add another brick to your own internal psychological structure?
Are you finally ready to step out of the house, or are you just looking for more material to renovate the prison? That is a great question to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the profound ideas of J. Krishnamurti's 1962 London discussion. Keep questioning your conditioning, stay watchful in the stream, and we'll see you next time.